Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we time traveling back to one of the most transformative periods in human history, the Industrial Revolution. It's a huge topic, so buckle up. What was it, really? Simply put, it was a fundamental shift from hand production methods to machines, from agrarian societies to industrial ones. It didn't happen overnight, but from roughly 1760 to 1840, the world changed forever, starting in Great Britain. So, why Britain? What was so special about it? Well, it was a perfect storm of factors. Britain had abundant natural resources, especially coal and iron ore, which were the lifeblood of industrialization. It also had a stable political system, a growing population that provided both labor and a market for goods, and a culture that encouraged scientific innovation and entrepreneurship. Plus, its vast colonial empire gave it access to raw materials and created captive markets for its finished products. Think of it as having all the right ingredients at the exact right time. Let's talk about the key innovations. The textile industry was the first to feel the impact. Before, spinning yarn and weaving cloth was a slow, manual process done in people's homes, the cottage industry. Then came inventions like the spinning jenny and the water frame, which could spin multiple threads at once. Richard Arkwright's water frame, in particular, was too big for a cottage, so he built a factory around it, powered by a water wheel. This was the birth of the factory system. Suddenly, textile production exploded. But the real game changer was steam power. While water power was great, it limited factories to being near rivers. James Watt's improved steam engine in the 1770s changed everything. It was more efficient and could be used anywhere. Now, you could power machinery with coal, which Britain had plenty of. This wasn't just about factories. The steam engine powered the Industrial Revolution's most iconic creations, the locomotive and the steamboat. Think about transportation before this. You had horses, carts, and canals. It was slow and expensive to move goods. Then, George Stephenson's rocket came chugging along. The railway boom began. Suddenly, you could transport raw materials like coal to factories and finished goods to markets faster and cheaper than ever before. It connected the country in an unprecedented way, shrinking distances and accelerating the pace of life and commerce. The world literally started moving faster. This new industrial world also created new social structures. For centuries, most people lived in rural villages and worked the land. The Industrial Revolution triggered a massive migration of people from the countryside to the cities in search of work in the new factories. This process is called urbanization. Cities like Manchester, Liverpool, and London swelled in size, becoming bustling, chaotic centers of industry. However, life in these new industrial cities was far from glamorous for the working class. People were packed into overcrowded, unsanitary slums. Housing was poorly built, there was no proper sewage system, and diseases like cholera and typhoid spread like wildfire. It was a tough, grim reality for many. Working conditions inside the factories were often brutal. A typical workday could be 12 to 16 hours long, 6 days a week. The work was repetitive, monotonous, and incredibly dangerous. Machines had no safety guards, and accidents were common, often resulting in serious injury or death. There was no job security, no workers' compensation, and wages were pitifully low. Perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect was the widespread use of child labor. Children, some as young as 5 or 6, worked in factories and mines. Their small size made them useful for tasks like crawling under machinery to fix broken threads. They were paid a fraction of what adults earned and were subjected to the same harsh conditions and long hours. It's a dark chapter, but it's crucial to understanding the full picture of this era. The social landscape was also redrawn. Before, wealth was primarily tied to land ownership, dominated by the aristocracy. The Industrial Revolution created a new, powerful class, the industrial capitalists. These were the factory owners, the bankers, and the entrepreneurs who amassed incredible fortunes. This led to the rise of a new middle class as well: managers, engineers, doctors, and lawyers who served the needs of this new economy. Society became more stratified, with a vast gap between the wealthy factory owners and the impoverished working class. Naturally, this new system created tension. Workers began to organize to fight for better conditions. Early attempts at forming trade unions were often met with harsh resistance from factory owners and the government. Movements like the Luddites famously smashed machinery in protest against job losses. Over time, however, these struggles led to important social reforms. Laws were eventually passed to limit working hours, improve factory safety, and restrict child labor. It was a long, hard-fought battle for workers' rights. The impact of the Industrial Revolution wasn't confined to Britain. Its ideas and technologies quickly spread across the globe, first to Western Europe and North America, then to the rest of the world. Each country adapted industrialization to its own context, but the core principles remained the same: mechanization, factory production, and urbanization. This global spread led to a new wave of imperialism as industrialized nations sought raw materials and new markets for their goods, fundamentally reshaping global politics and economics. So, what's the legacy? It's complicated. On one hand, the Industrial Revolution led to unprecedented economic growth and a rise in the overall standard of living for many. It gave us innovations that we still rely on today, from mass production to modern transportation. It laid the groundwork for the technological world we live in. We have access to goods and services that would have been unimaginable to people before this era. On the other hand, it came at a tremendous human and environmental cost. The social inequalities, the harsh labor conditions, and the urban poverty were immense challenges. Environmentally, the reliance on coal began a long history of industrial pollution and carbon emissions that we are still grappling with today. The smoke-filled skies of industrial cities were a sign of progress to some, but they were also the beginning of a long-term environmental problem. In essence, the Industrial Revolution was a double-edged sword. It unleashed human ingenuity and productive capacity on a scale never seen before, but it also created deep social divisions and environmental challenges. It's a story of innovation and exploitation, progress and pain. Understanding this period is essential to understanding the modern world, from our economic systems to our urban landscapes and even our climate crisis. It's not just a dusty chapter in a history book. It's the foundation of the world we inhabit. Thanks so much for watching. I know that was a lot to take in, but it's such a fascinating and important topic. What part of the Industrial Revolution do you find most interesting? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history. See you in the next one.